Hi, it's Calvin Niles, the mindful storyteller, and I am delighted to share with you stories of awakening. Each week, I'm going to be talking to people from around the world of various backgrounds and experiences. People I love, I know, and people I admire, but also those who are completely new to me. One thing all my guests will have in common is that they have been through a journey of awakening. By awakening, I mean a call to higher consciousness and deeper self-awareness beyond material reality. These stories will be real, challenging, funny, stimulating, and insightful. We're going to take our good time with these conversations. So listen from your comfy chair with your favorite drink, or on your weekend stroll, your morning routine, or whatever makes you happy. Stories of Awakening with me, Calvin Niles, and I look forward to you tuning in. Kelsay, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation and Stories of Awakening. I saw your work, I read your essays, and I was just really like, I gotta reach out. And I was intrigued, of course, to learn more about your own story, your own call to higher consciousness, and um, especially from some of the experiences you talked about in your past, but also which have also shaped your outlook on life. And I just love to learn more about your journey and how it all started for you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me, Kelvin. I'm so excited to be here. And I guess my kind of spiritual awakening started when I began conscious dance through five rhythms and open floor. I yeah, I had this string of abusive relationships that kind of the last of which we actually did a fast together, and I started to have some visits from different spirit guides. One is a raven, and another was this green dragon that kind of flew at me one night, like towards the window in my apartment. And so I was just like, okay, I have to figure out what this is, or, what all of these visions and visits are kind of getting me to look at. So I started to move my body. And when I did, I realized that like it really was about coming in and awakening those different chakra levels. Pretty much that first year that I was dancing, I would see the floor, like the whole floor in the room, glow the different chakra colors, starting with kind of my heart. The first like one of the first dances I went to, when the whole room glowed green, and I really felt this kind of tender awakening in my heart.
Wow.
And yeah, and then as I continued dancing that year, it went through kind of all the different colors, and I got much more in touch with who I am.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot here to get stuck into for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for summarizing that. So, so Kelsey, you were saying that it happened for you with the dance. Um, what called you to do conscious dancing? Well, I guess one of the questions I'd love to know is what is conscious dancing? And then, what called you to that? I mean, did you stumble across it, or were you already seeking something, consciously seeking something? Hi, if you're enjoying this conversation, you might like SOAR Book Club. Many similar conversations are happening in SOAR Book Club, a book club for the spiritually curious. If you like spiritual books and community, then why not join SOAR, where we can grow together, learn together in a fun and nurturing environment. Click the link below in the description to find out more about SOAR Book Club or to find out how you can join. It'd be nice to see you there.
Yeah, so I guess yeah, some of the people in the group, kind of in the friend group that I had at the time, were conscious dancers, and yeah, I too was like, well, what is that? And as a kid I took like tap, ballet, and jazz classes, but I was never really like a disciplined person. So I never practiced and I
Join the
never went to the
club.
recitals. Yeah. But it was so much fun to dance, and I've always loved just dancing. But not felt particularly drawn to like the club scene. So I had been searching for an outlet for dance. So when I heard about the conscious dance, I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And it really it's much more about kind of like a movement meditation, but using dance and the music to create the experience that really puts you in a place to go deeply inwards and get in touch with the psychic material, as well as some facilitators or DJs will invite people to engage with each other so that you're in kind of a community or group meditation where you're connecting and then going back inwards, and so kind of going out and coming back in.
Mm,
And then if like I would go to some of the 6-hour workshops or even the 2-day long workshops, and they in those places they really work with your psychic material moving through the body. And that was the missing piece for me. I hadn't realized I was so disembodied and just in my mind until I began
mm.
to move and dance and really connect with people like in a healthy way through the body.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess at that time it was you were just naturally curious because of your friendship group, and you kind of, for lack of a better expression, sort of stumbled into conscious dancing in a way. So when you say, you had this awakening experience through that, what actually happened for you? I mean, did you just come home one day and think, because I know you mentioned, your heart kind of opened, and did you come home after that and have thoughts or experiences? Was that when you were visited by the dragon, or what happened, like, after that dance? What changed, and what was it that really happened for you in your own kind of sensory experience?
Um, yeah, I think it was a combination of just sort of immersing myself in sort of that field of energy and spirituality and psychology. And it started because I was doing the fast, and it was the first time I had done anything like that. And my intention really was to like get more in touch with my soul, or the spirit, and discover more about how I'm connected in the universe. And so I had that intention going into the fasting period. And I also I was really like not necessarily praying, but really holding all those intentions and writing and self-reflecting about it. And I put a fire on one night in the fireplace in my apartment, and as I was kind of staring into it, that was when the first vision happened. And I saw like a past life when I had been much more in touch with spirituality, much more in my body, and could feel sort of the passion and um, like the fury of that lifetime. And then shortly after that, a bunch of like my spirit guides began visiting me at night, or
Yeah.
like I said, with the dragon flying in through the window.
This is I mean, oh man, I'm just gonna get my pen and start writing notes for my next novel. um, so did you already at that time, was your vocabulary already rich with words like spirit guides and getting in touch with my soul and that kind of thing? Or is that more retrospective, as you reflect now that you realize that's what you were doing?
Yeah, well, I had grown up, watching Charmed and sort of, playing with my friends in high school, trying to be Wiccan, the way, so so I knew some of the terminology, and then in college, I was a philosophy major, and so I became like an atheist since everyone was that was, a philosophy major at the time. So I was like, I have to get rid of all of my sort of witchy, more spiritual things. And um, then, coming out of that, I was like, that's not really who I am, though. There is like, I do feel like there's a deeper meaning um, and purpose to life.
Mm,
And at the time that all of this was happening, which was actually only in 2016, so not too long ago, I just felt like I was floating and lost and kind of purposeless. And I knew that I did have a purpose and I wanted to find out what it was.
yeah, yeah, I get it. So this kind of what is almost existential questioning. Why am I here? And I suppose that's ideal for a philosophy student.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. And that's what led you, by this time, had you already done the conscious dancing, or was that what then started you on the quest?
I started pretty much like a week after I had all of the visitations from these spirit guides. And that was, oh, sorry, my cat's meowing.
That's all right. Yeah.
And that was what kind of gave me a structure and a deeper understanding of what was happening for me. So many people that were doing the conscious dance are like also deep meditators and Buddhists and coaches and therapists. So I found a community of people who had a language for what I was, just discovering sort of experientially. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that really helped to guide me and really fill that space and create more of that field, as I was saying, that I was really just immersed in.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess there was even a feeling of emptiness. I mean, I read one or two of your essays of your work that you've published in various channels, and and I remember there was one you talked about your experience with connecting with your biological mother from a kind of spiritual point of view. Um, I may be putting words in your mouth here, but it was definitely not a physical connection, was it?
Right. So I actually I'm a Reiki practitioner, and from the first Reiki training and Reiki attunement that I had, I felt deeply connected to um my ancestral lineage and my biological family in a way that I hadn't before. Since I am a Korean adoptee and was relinquished at birth, I just never thought that I would be able to connect in any kind of meaningful way with, any sort of blood relatives. So I had just kind of, dismissed it or just kind of thought that it was something that wasn't possible. So why like try to, you know, hope for that kind of connection? And the Reiki and the energy work really allowed me to understand what it meant to be connected to blood and to roots and to lineage. And then through some Reiki sessions that I received from my master and teacher, I actually got to see my birth mother in the session and um like could literally see what she looked like and have a conversation with her. And I did ask if we would meet in the physical plane, and she said no, not in this lifetime. And like I could feel that no fill my body and like feel the truth of it just hearing that. And that actually allowed me to grieve that loss in a real way, because now she was a person that I had a face and sort of a shape for. And before, it had just been this abstract idea. Um, so,
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, you
yeah.
just give me chills, man. It's very powerful. So yeah, and I can imagine that. How long ago was that on this whole journey of you started the fasting, and it sounds to me like there was a conscious thread to you for a very long time, or certainly some curiosity to a non-material reality for a very long time, even though you maybe hadn't quite dropped into your purpose fully. That questioning, do you think that came as a consequence of this experience you had with your mother in the Reiki energy session that you did, or sessions, or did that happen before the fasting?
Yeah, so yeah, the fasting, or my spiritual awakening, happened in 2016, and I did the Reiki training as well as a coaching training with the Academy for Soul-Based Coaching and the Tamalpa Institute life art process, around the same time in 2019. So I was again just sort of kind of steeped in the field, but I had, through conscious dance and through my spiritual journey, I had realized that I have two masters in creative writing, and I had thought that I might be an academic professor, or like a writing teacher, but um that was such a life of the mind that it wasn't fulfilling all of me. And when I took a class at the California Institute of Integral Studies in transpersonal psychology that was about really working in like the therapeutic setting, as a guide and facilitator, and using the Enneagram and movement and deep self inquiry. In the dyad work, I realized that I love holding space for people and talking to people, and really serving as a guide and as a coach. So that had started my path of doing the practitioner trainings. And then I did the Reiki on a whim, because one of my open floor teachers was doing it, and I was like, okay, I'll just see what it's about. And that did sort of drop me in to my body and into my purpose in a way that I hadn't been expecting.
Mm.
And yeah, and so also doing the soul-based coaching, I was able to explore the metaphoric connection to Korea and to my birth lineage through the clean facilitation, and really draw out those metaphors, and through the Tamalpa work, embody them. And so kind of drawing on all of the things I was involved in at the time really helped my process and really helped me integrate at a much deeper level.
Wow. Yeah. I'm kind of imagining a really accelerated experience for you from, I mean, 2016, and then from there on in going through, because you've lived your whole life in California, and you're just going through life like, okay, I'm going to write, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to study. And then you had this experience when you were fasting, the spirit guides came. Did they speak to you? Or, what actually, your cat is just meowing. Yeah. What?
Yeah, sorry about
Yeah, that's
that.
okay. I think she had some atmosphere to the conversation. Um, just so the viewers know, that is not my stomach. um, but yeah, so this experience when these guides appeared happened right after the fasting. So I'm just trying to get the chronology right in my own mind.
Sure, sure.
You had this fasting experience for that you are new to this, and this was because you mentioned it was a relationship that you were in, and people around you in your friendship group and your circle, they were doing this kind of thing.
Yeah.
That then the spirit guide came when you lit the fire. This vision came to you, and that's what then made you go, I need to check further, look further into uh what's going on here. Did it speak to you in a particular way? Did you hear a voice, or what happened when the spirit's guides appeared?
Yeah, so some of them did speak to me, and really kind of offered me wisdom and direction that and a comfort, I feel, that really gave me more inspiration to continue with the journey and to go deeper. I think the first one that came that night that I lit the fire actually said that she was my twin flame and she doesn't exist like in this plane. But she said, that she was there to help support me and guide me, and that I could call on her if I ever needed to. And that just kind of offered me some, yeah, comfort that I wasn't alone. Um, And I did actually I grew up in Michigan, so my family's still there, so I was feeling very isolated here in California at the time. So just knowing, that I did have support with these guides, and I did a vision quest with my raven guide, and she also spoke to me, and um so like actually kind of put her like the top of her head kind of on my head around my third eye and nestled me, and I felt very like the that contact, even though it wasn't necessarily like a physical contact, I could feel it in my body too, that really warmed me, and again provided some of that comfort that I wasn't having in my sort of physical material circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, well, wow. That's a major explosion of an awakening to another reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, this wasn't a 50-year quest. This was a night by the fire. Um, so what so this you mentioned that your Raven guide. So I guess that's when you met the Raven, or how many guides appeared at that time?
Yeah, it was about 2 weeks, and see the raven, the green dragon, my twin flame, who said her name is Seema, and um oh, and spiders, which have always kind of tormented me throughout my life, and always seem to be here. My housemate even attests that she never saw as many spiders in the house before I moved in, but they all those revealed themselves in that couple week period, and then more have come, as I've been on the path for these 5-6 years.
Wow. So that took you through some training. Clearly it took you through some ancestral healing when you met your mother. Um, where did that then take you? I guess that, you know, put some wind in your sails, so to speak, and that took you further down the line. Was there anything else big that happened? One of the things in these conversations that I've started to learn is that some people have these big moments, like huge moments, a bit like you, really, because that's a huge moment. Well, to me, my interpretation, I should say. I mean, for you, it might be like, oh yeah, I just met a dragon and the raven by the fire. It's cool. For me, that's like a really big moment, isn't it? And for a lot of people who I've been talking to, they've been saying, some of them have been saying, well, for me, it didn't really happen in one big bang. I had a series of experiences. Some The context of them started to change as I had the second one. The first one's meaning start to give more, What happened for you as these guys came, you did your Reiki work, you did your training, and you started to expand in this area? What started to unfold after that for you in terms of waking you up on your own life journey?
Yeah, I think one of the things for me is that, as an adoptee, I have, from like the time that I, am was conscious and, could think and write and speak and read, been trying to figure out who I am and sort of where I belong in the world and what I have to offer. And so that's made me very open to just the learning process and these experiences. So when, yes, I did feel like they were very dramatic. It is not every day that you talk to a raven or see a green dragon flying at you.
Well, virtual reality is a thing now, so you never know. People might be having these experiences all the time.
This is true. Yeah, but I think that openness and that curiosity and that desire to really find my place and discover more about, why I'm here and where I fit in led me, not to dismiss it, but to really stay open to it and want to go deeper into that exploration. And that um that willingness, I think, to go with it and to be in flow with it rather than resist it. Although, my therapist might say I had a lot of resistance. But but yeah, I feel like that kind of allowed me to expand rather than go in a different direction. And by being able to expand and stay with it, I did figure out, oh yeah, I have these gifts and these really are part of what I can offer and help, facilitate with other people and serve in that way.
Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of getting that you're questioning about, so you mentioned being an adoptee, you were asking questions from a very young age, you know, who am I? Where do I fit into this world? And that kind of thing. I mean, it sounds like you've been questioning from a really early age, actually, in some ways. Um, do you think that that's actually helped you to awaken?
I think so, because I was able to, and my adoptive parents have been so supportive, but they really allowed me to figure out who I was and to explore all these different things like dance and sports and philosophy and witchcraft. And I could try on like all these different things and really see what felt right to me and what felt authentic and what didn't, so that when I did have the spiritual awakening, I was like, oh yeah, this does feel right, because I know what isn't right and how that feels, so I could really trust that this is the true path for me and that it really is a calling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's amazing. You already had a kind of nurturing environment which lent itself to your exploration. So I guess your only enemy, so to speak, was your own resistance, as you mentioned before, to inquire. Um, did you have a breaking point where that, like, so for example, for me, I can say, and I know we say the word awakening, we mean this as loosely as possible because we're all still developing, of course. Um, but I can say that I had to go through a lot of pain um, to really start asking, to just say, okay, what's really going on here, for a fundamental shift in my perspective. Would you say that you had any sort of major moments, um, either before or since, even post the fireplace experience? Has anything, where's the journey taken you, or have you had any big moments even before the fireplace that really made you go, wow, there's got to be more here?
Yeah, definitely. I think, the pain sort of those, really toxic relationships that I had kind of leading up to the spiritual awakening, um, really put me in a place of questioning myself because I really was allowing, my friends in these relationships to define me rather than myself. And I got to a place where I didn't even know who I was anymore because I was really just taking in all this external information and I was very confused. And particularly in the last one that was really just, sexually and emotionally abusive, and there was a lot of gaslighting. I was very confused about what to believe, and I didn't trust myself. So really, um learning to be in my body and that I could trust my body, and the wisdom that was coming through, these spirit guide visitations and this connection to others and sort of the universe and energy fields allowed me to kind of find my way again and reclaim my voice and get in touch with how I was defining myself and how I was seeing myself again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful stuff. And I know what you mean in terms of, you know, um, I was actually going to ask you, when you say your relationships, did you mean romantic relationships? But it became clear as you explained more. So there was a big part of you having to really step out of those kind of manipulative environments to be able to say, well, who am I really? So that then took you through on this journey, and I get the fasting and I get the experience with the guides. Now the last 5 years, 5 and 8 years and a bit, you must have had a number of other experiences, because I can only imagine after your guides connect with you like in the fashion that you described, did they disappear? Did they stay forever? What happened for you after that?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely still here. They come at different moments. I don't always feel connected to every single one of them all the time. They will just sort of, kind of give me a nudge when I need their particular wisdom or medicine. Um, one of the guys that came later, sort of my power animal. I was in a women's group and I had actually just gotten rear-ended and was running late. I was like half an hour late and they were already meditating. So when I got there, I was very like kind of discombobulated and not in my body. And through, just kind of jumping into the meditation that was happening, this snow leopard jumped out of my chest and like literally flew out and then just kind of stared at me, and I was like, wow, hello. And she made it known that she is sort of my power animal, and she's been kind of asserting herself more as the years have gone on. Particularly, she came her first appearance was in 2017, and this year she's kind of towards the end of last year and this move to 2022, she's been with me almost every day, saying, pay attention to me and really um get into my own empowerment. And I've also started using that theme with clients and some upcoming workshops I have that, I feel very inspired and led by that at the moment. That sort of inner power and like ferocity. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So where has this brought you now, Kelsay, in terms of, you've had this big wake up moment that night by the fire. Um, Are you just cruising now?
I feel very like I feel like I'm very in flow, and I actually got the feedback from one of my therapists recently that, that sort of the switch from, being sort of in that, like, well, being a victim and really being in that kind of, oh my gosh, I don't have a voice or any power, to now, she said, I made it look so effortless. And I do feel like that is because I stayed open, and really went with, and followed through on these different, visions, and things that came my way. Um and being in that flow, I think, has allowed, even though it has definitely been painful along the way, a certain ease to it that, um that I appreciate.
Yeah, yeah. So when you say even though it has been painful, what do you mean?
Yeah, well, I guess, I mean, when I did see my birth mother, there was a lot of grief, that brought up, and anger, and of course, working through the abusive relationships, has also been there's been a lot of anger, and forgiveness, and then anger again, and forgiveness again. So and even, now sometimes I do find, like, oh my gosh, I go back to that, like, angry place, and then I'm like, oh, um so it's not linear. I definitely feel like, there's, the work is always there, and that, by staying open and really, exploring it as much as I can, in every time that it comes back up for me, that does create a flow and an ease, and, that does feel kind of like cruising along.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can see that you're really an optimistic person. So even when the challenges come, I guess that optimism allows you to almost relax into it. It's hard maybe relax into it sort of flimsy way of you know what I mean though, Um
Yeah.
the challenges arise and it feels like you have more confidence that you're able to deal with that. I think one of the things that's another insight from these conversations is that, you mentioned it's not linear. And, for me, I'm asking questions in a very linear fashion. I appreciate that. What happened first, then what happened second, then what happened third. But one of the things is I'm learning is people are saying, actually it's not really happening in that way. Um, and I guess putting it into words almost forces it into a linear way, in some sense. But actually it's happening in all kinds of different patterns and orders. Um, is that is that maybe right to you, what I'm saying? Would you say that that's true?
Yeah, I think that my experience is definitely, particularly looking back, don't feel linear. And yet, there is a linearity to, the timeline of how things happened. So I
Yeah,
think it's really, it's both, that they did happen in a chronological fashion, and but how I make sense of them, and how, they feel, is definitely not linear. And also the process itself is not linear. Like I said, there is still anger, and I do go, into my moments of, feeling sorry for myself about it still. And I have much more resources and tools now to, come out of that much quicker, and, and not go, to that place as deeply too. So
that is such a clear explanation. Thank you for thank you for that. Yeah, I shall remember to play this back every time I need clarity on that. um
yeah.
so yeah, so where to now? I mean, so you've come through this training, and what has this, I guess, is what next for Kelsay?
Yeah, so actually right before a month before the pandemic happened, I started an online coaching business um to really help guide and hold space for people, like me who are kind of going through those transitions or, not really sure of their path, wanting to reclaim their voice and just have some guidance and because I did have so many great teachers and wonderful people supporting me along the way, not just the spiritual guidance, but people that were really helping me in my process. I just want to be able to return that gift and to help other people that are going
Yeah,
through this.
yeah, yeah. What were you doing beforehand? Before you even,
Yeah.
like, career wise?
So I have, been a professional writer and artist. I have, done some exhibitions around San Francisco and had some publications and was kind of going into the teacher route. And I am still working on my PhD in transformative inquiry, but I'm very clear now that I don't want to go into academia, but be more of like the scholar practitioner where, I can do sort of research and writing projects that really just also help serve this process of, people learning to be their full selves and express, themselves on all of the levels and sort of integrate these parts. So it's not necessarily like I know people in the business world love to say that they pivot. I don't necessarily feel like I pivoted so much as just, you know, expanded
Evolved.
what was already there.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the work, I mean, do you still do the art, or how is the art going to feature now, and um does that show up? It's so funny because earlier today I was having a discussion with a friend of mine who's actually putting on an art show in London. She's got synesthesia and she paints sounds, and I'm going to team up with a couple of people to do a workshop in this space. And I thought, well, look at that, right? Synchronicity, as they say. If should such a thing really, really exist?
Wow, yeah.
That was literally 2 hours ago. No,
Oh my
seriously, it's
gosh.
literally 2 hours ago. So do you think your art is a part of your own, journey and your own work? The other day I was talking to Michael Taylor, a guy from Texas, actually, really amazing dude, and he was saying that for him, like, music speaks to his heart in a way that words couldn't. And it was such an integral part of his own waking up to a higher consciousness, to a non-material reality, to speaking to God directly. Will your art feature in that process for you on your own journey, or how does this all tie together?
Yes, it definitely does. I've become an expressive arts coach and trained in the life art process, which I feel is a better fit for me. I have kind of moved away from, doing exhibitions and the professional art field to just helping people see that everyone is an artist and everyone has this ability to express themselves and connect to God and different kind of you know alternate realities through these mediums, with dance, with drawing, with writing, the kind of multimodal expressive arts that I do, includes all three of those as well as some coaching to help really move the psychic material and express that through the various art forms for new insights and new revelations because it really does allow different things to move through you.
Amazing. Yeah, maybe I need to come on one of your courses because I've been taught I'm such a bad artist. I'm only joking. I'm only joking. But yeah, no. Well, thank you so much for that. I love the fact that you've explained something so clearly as well. It's almost helped me to put other things into context, especially around this partially linear, partially non-linear description of, process versus time and the whole emotional experience. So I mean, I imagine, an event from the past can still continue to help you to wake up to even higher degrees of awareness um, as we kind of develop in life. So yeah, well, thank you. I guess it's just I'm mindful of your own time. I don't want to keep you too long for starting your day, but I mean, is there anything that you would say, is looming large for you right now, or anything you want to share? Really, just kind of open.
Yeah, well, I guess one of the things that's really meaningful for me right now is that I am working in my Tamalpa Institute fieldwork study with a group of Korean adoptees to explore the life art process and this connection through energy and metaphor, and the different art modalities with them. And I find that particularly meaningful on this path that I have come kind of through, like the social justice, like adoptee Asian American scene, and now can bring that also into my spiritual and artwork as well.
That's incredible. Well, thank you. I mean, you've got my mind going, and I could just, maybe we need to have another conversation
I
down
would
the
love
line.
that.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many neurons firing right now. It's like New Year's Day, in my brain anyway. So, Kelsay, I just want to really say thank you. I really appreciate you making the time to talk. And I appreciate the work that you're doing as well. It really captivated me and my attention when I read your essay and the deep work and the courage and everything that's involved in that. So thanks again. Let's stay in touch, and all of your description links and everything else will be below this video if it's being watched, or associated with the podcast if you're listening to this show. So that's it from me. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Calvin. It was a pleasure.
What is most meaningful for you in 2022? Is it healing and forgiveness? Is it love and belonging? Or maybe it's the courage to be and to act. Soar Book Club has all of this for you. If you want to read more and need accountability to keep you moving forward in your already busy life, are you looking for inspiration to develop your spiritual awareness? Maybe you want to be part of a positive community during these uncertain times, or connect with like-minded people who love stories and books. Then join Soar Book Club. Hop on board. The train is about to leave the station, and I would love to have you on the journey with me. So click the link below to join. That's Soar Book Club with me, Calvin Niles. I hope to see you there.